Be on the record?
Yes, we're on the right.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Well, it's 6:36, Thursday, July 22nd. This meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded for storage and viewing on our district website. The public can participate during hearings of individuals and delegates by signing up for a live audio public speaks via WebEx through a form that's available on our website, as well as signing up for to submit a written statement using the BOE questions form on our website. Adequate written notice of this meeting of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education has been sent to both townships and village clerks, the Star Ledger, News Record, tapintosomba.net, and thevillagegreen.com. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Butler, who's filling in for Ms. Delgercio this evening? Thank you. Can you please note for the record that that Board Member Sabin will be unable to attend this evening due to a previous engagement? And with that, may you please call a roll?
Okay. Board Member Bergen.
Here.
Board Member Cuddle.
Here.
Board President Joshua.
Here.
Board Member Manny.
Here.
Board Member Malaspina.
Here.
All right, Board Member Sabin is not here. Board Member Siders.
Here.
Board Member Winkfield.
Here.
Board Member Wright.
Present.
Okay, Board President Joshua, 8 present members. And there is no student representative attending tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to hold this meeting hybrid. May I have a second?
Second.
Virtual. This is virtual. My apologies. I'm making a motion to hold this meeting virtual. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Board Member Cuddle, all in favor? That appears to be unanimous, Ms. Butler.
Thank you.
Now at the time for our first public speaks. Let me read the board statement first. School board meeting is a business meeting in public, not a meeting with the public. Oftentimes, it may appear to members of our audience that the Board of Education takes action with very little comment, and in many cases, a unanimous vote. Before a matter is placed on the agenda at a public meeting, the administration has thoroughly reviewed the matter with the superintendent. If the superintendent is satisfied that the matter is ready to be presented to the board, it's referred to the appropriate board committee. Members of the board committee work with administration and superintendent to ensure members fully understand the matter. After the committee discusses the meeting, it is shared with other board members for consideration, and only then is it placed on the agenda for a board discussion and action at a public meeting. As I was about to say, we are now at time for hearings of individuals as delegates, also known as public speaks. This is an opportunity for you to share your concerns about an item on the agenda, but it's not a time for dialogue with the board. The board requests that you state your name and the town of your residence for the record. We will then set the time to 3 minutes for each speaker, and we ask that you respect that time limit. We must cut you off so it does not appear as if we are giving anyone an advantage to share their views over another individual. Speakers have the full protection of free speech during public speaks. However, this form does not protect you from the subject of your free speech pursuing libel or slander charges. Finally, the board recommends that all members of our community pursue the chain of command. Okay, Mr. Bonds, I'm looking and I'm going to go first to our audio comment sign up. And I don't see any names signed up to speak. So we'll now move on to our written submissions. And I don't see any written submissions there either. So that concludes our first public speaks. We're now going to move on to the retreat portion of our meeting with NJSBA. I'd like to make a motion to take a brief 5-minute recess in order for us to get onto the Google Meet where we will be participating in the board retreat this evening. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Cuddle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The board is officially in 5-minute recess, and we'll see you all in the Google Meet, which will be streamed via this WebEx and on YouTube as well. Thank you and see you in a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Honey, can you mute your mic for a second? I want to see if I'm hearing feedback from your mic. Thank you.
All right, board member Bergen is having a little bit of technical issues, so give her a couple minutes, and we're actually right on to the 6:25. Just trying to get the camera to cooperate, so just give it a couple minutes. Tomorrow. Check. So, so, listen, Aaron, Anne Marie, Courtney, Shannon, me, Susan. Susan, can you hear us? All right. Joanne, I have to make a motion to, I guess, announce we're back in session to roll call before we move forward, right? Just want to confirm. Okay. So we'll wait we'll wait for Ms. Bergen, Board Member Bergen to rejoin us.
For some levity, I can't believe that I can hike for 5 miles and be fine, but I opened the fridge and pulled out a salad and my back went out.
I totally get it. I don't know what I did that landed me having the surgery. I bent down to like in the shower, and that's what ended up with me. So I hear you. It sucks.
Feel better.
Thanks.
Both of you. Awful.
I'm actually just going to move seats because I have to walk for a second. So I'm going to be off camera for just a minute just because I need to do that. Sorry.
I feel for both of you who had back surgery. Ice packs.
Hi, I'm on my phone again. So I might need to turn the camera off when I need to reposition it or charge it or something, but I'm going to do the best I can here. I'm sorry.
Hello, Charlene. Hello, Ray. How are you?
Yes, welcome to our
Very good,
distinguished guest.
Joanna. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay.
All right. I think, Ms. Butler, I think we're all here now, so if you just make a motion, I believe we're back to resume our public meeting. Ms. Butler, can you take the roll?
Board Member Wright,
Ooh. Present.
Board Member Winkfield,
Here.
Board Member Siders,
Here.
Board Member Saban is not present. Board Member Malaspina,
Here.
Board Member Manny,
Here.
Board President Joshua,
Here.
Board Member Cuddle,
Here.
Board Member Bergen.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and again, welcome to our Mr. Bonds. Just want to confirm we are still up on the WebEx.
Confirmed, we're on WebEx still.
Thank you, much appreciated, and thanks again for technology pushing to make this happen for us this evening. I think the way this is going to work best if we turn it over to, I know it has a presentation for us to review the results of our board self-evaluation, and then Mr. Penny will be here until approximately 8 p.m. to help us answer any questions that come up. And with that, I will give the floor to Ms. Peterson. Now, will you be able to see us if we have questions, or do you need someone else to sort of help facilitate that piece?
Based on past experience, I will probably need assistance. Usually I just see the presentation on my screen and often not the faces. So I would appreciate assistance.
Sure. So I'll flag anytime there are hands raised, and you just let me know if you want us to wait till the end or on the slide by slide basis, what you think will work best.
So really, the intent of tonight from my perspective is to have this be a conversational opportunity, the board self-evaluation is a tool that allows the board to spend some time to focus on its own work, that so often much of our time is spent, at our meetings doing the work of the district, and we don't necessarily always have the time to talk about our work. And there's more and more evidence that the work of, high-performing boards says that when you can have a positive impact on student achievement. So before I get started, I did want to welcome Ray here tonight, Penny, who is with me. Like I said, his colleague from New Jersey School Boards. And Ray, I don't know if you want to take a second just to introduce yourself. I'm not sure if you need an introduction, but
No,
I'll have you take
I
that
know,
second.
I know a lot of the board members. I don't know all of them. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think Charlene's right. You use it as a tool, really, just to have a conversation. How are you going to move? I think the conversation should be how you're going to move forward. Sometimes we spend too much time looking back and rehashing the history, and the focus should be on how we're going to move forward and improve. And that's what a good board does. It discusses that. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. And Charlene, if I see a question, I might also let you know if someone raises their hand.
It might be better, Ray, if you can do that, at least while you're here,
okay.
so that we can focus on each other, and particularly me, I focus on listening and sort of watching and sort of moderating.
Yeah, I don't think her presentation will be extremely long or anything like that. I think most of the time will be spent with a conversation. So, okay, Charlene.
You're muted, Ms. Peterson.
It's really, like I said, it's just a few slides, and it's just to really help facilitate the conversation, that I thought it would be more helpful to take the board self-evaluation at a high level, kind of look at, the outcome, and then, like I said, talk about how we can use it to move forward. So I am going to share my screen, hopefully. And okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is us tonight, right? This is what a board retreat could look like. So we just have to use our imagination, right? That this is us sitting out there. So like I said, our intent tonight is to review the board self-evaluation from the perspective of looking at ways that we can identify to move forward. And one of the resources that New Jersey School Boards has been recommending and using is a book called The Governance Core. And I have used this to kick off a couple retreats that helps us kind of understand that need for us to work together as a team and to move forward. So recognizing that sometimes it is difficult, or we may think it's difficult to find common ground, but it is important that we take the time to work together and forge professional, respectful relationships. And from this perspective of that the responsibility of governance is so profound that there is no acceptable alternative. So I hope that each of you will take that into consideration, consider the value and the importance of your role as a team. And we say that, if we hold the rest of the district accountable for helping advance student achievement, and recognizing that if we can make a difference by working together as a team, that we should consider ourselves to be responsible to do that as well, that our students deserve that. And like they said, there's no acceptable alternative. So this is the board self-evaluation. Just like I said, a high level across the 9 standards, but just wanted to point out some things. So all 8 members completed it. The board self-evaluation is based on a 4.0 scale. And typically we will say that for those areas under a 3.0 are areas that should deserve some more of the board's attention. Well, if you look at the board score in the middle for this year, you will see that every area, right, is under a 3.0. And also showed you what last year's scores were. And then we also will look at, there's two parts to the Board of Self-Evaluation, how you scored the board, and then for each area, how you scored yourself as a member. And again, ideally, as we would look at this, we would hope that working together as a board team, that the score of the board, that there should be synergy in us working together, and that we should be able to accomplish more as a team than any one of us can do individually. So, we'll see that, we'll look at a chart in just a minute that will help summarize this, but you can see for the most part that that's not the case. So the two areas that the board scored itself the lowest was in planning. The board gave itself its overall score of a 1.7. And also in board performance. There, again, the board gave itself an overall score of 1.7. And then interestingly, if you look at the left column of the member score, that is the highest area that the board members scored themselves with a 3.3. So where you said the board does the lowest, it's where the individuals said that they do the best. And can say that that's not that unusual, and that typically when that happens, it's here in this area of board performance, basically saying it's not me, it's all these other, all the other board members, right? So just, something for us to think about as we go through this. And then the highest area that the board scored itself was a 2.4 in board and staff relationships. And then wanted to kind of also let you see the overall average from last year. So like I said, this year's overall board average was a 2.1. Last year, it was a 2.3. And then also showed you in 2019, it was a 2.6. So you can see that we're heading in a direction that we would prefer, that if we consider this to be a tool to help us improve our work, that ideally these scores would be going in the other direction. So again, just kind of, indicators to us that we do have some work that we need to do as a board team. So just the fact that you've all taken the time to fill out the board self-evaluation and to be here tonight, is a great step in the right direction. I tell boards, the board self-evaluation used to be required about 5 or 6 years ago by the state as part of QSAC. And then when they relaxed some requirements, this is one of those requirements they relaxed. So we say that boards that continue to do this, do it because of, the opportunity for tonight to look at your own work. That's one of those characteristics of high performing boards, is that you take the time to reflect on your own work and use that reflection to help improve your work. So it's hope then that we will use tonight to be the start of that work. So I had mentioned the difference between the scores that the board scored itself as the board versus as the individual. So you can see for the most part, with the individual being the yellow bars, that in almost, everywhere across the board, that the difference between the board score and the individual score, with that one area in board performance where there is the greatest difference between the two. And then, it's also fairly significant in planning, which again was the other area that the board had evaluated the board scores as the lowest. And then here is that comparison for you to look at yourself this year versus last year. So I think with the exception of, looks like policy and student achievement, almost every other area, the board evaluated itself lower this year, again with that area of board performance showing the greatest difference between how the board scored itself last year and the board scored itself this year. So having said that, I'm going to stop sharing now for just a minute, and again then want to turn this over to a conversation and hope that that we can then, like I said, talk about kind of the board self-evaluation. What impressions did you get when you read it? Did you felt like the board, did you feel like it accurately reflected the work that's going on in the board? How did it make you feel looking at things like this about your board? So just kind of wanted to, have that conversation. So
All right.
if somebody wants to.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlene. I presume everyone is going to want to comment at some point. So instead of, the nervousness of who wants to go first or last, I'll break out my random name caller again, if that's okay with everybody, and we can let Excel decide.
And Board President Joshua, I just wanted to note that Board Member Saban has joined.
Yes, I did see. Thank you. All right. So, Erin.
Hi. Um, I I felt the results were kind of in line with what I anticipated. That individually, I think we are effective, but when we come together, that's where things seem to fall apart. Um, and I'm not sure how we can not necessarily come to consensus, but at least be able to respect each other's opinions and accept it and understand that we're not all going to agree, but that doesn't change the work that we need to do. We don't seem to do that as a board.
All right, thank you. Hillary.
So I guess the part that that really resonated through most of the comments and some of the evaluation markings, I think, is this idea of what does the majority of the board mean, and how do we use that term to move the work forward, and what does it mean for people who don't agree with a particular majority on a particular path. And I think that really needs to be discussed, because I think we all have a different opinion about what the majority means.
Hi. Quick question, Charlene. Do you want to delve deep on these things, or just listen to everyone first and then start sort of? Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm taking notes. Yeah. So then
Okay.
you'll just hear everyone and then go back.
Is it, what's going on? Is it me that's up now?
Yes,
Okay,
you
well,
are. You're next.
Sorry. Well, now all of a sudden audio came back. Sorry. I would say that I was not surprised by what was said. I also feel that the environment is the Anne Marie just made the point about the majority and respecting the majority, and when the majority tells the other members that well, we don't really care what you say because your vote, we don't need your vote. We already have the votes, which has been said to me and to other board members. I think it makes it hard for us to come to a consensus and feel like we can feel respected when that is the vibe and the energy that is coming towards us, is that we're being told that it doesn't really matter because we have the votes, what you think. And so when something like that happens, it makes it hard for consensus to occur, and I don't know how you move past something like that.
Susan?
Thanks. It's very interesting that we each voted or scored ourselves much higher than we scored the board. But the more I think about it, the more I think it kind of makes sense, because I do believe that we each are really passionate about this position and diligent about the work and care intensely about the issues. And it's when we all come together that we have a hard time getting sort of like past our individual ideas about things to come to some sort of group idea. And I think there's a definite lack of trust going in multiple directions on the board that's contributing to that.
All right. Thank you, Susan. Next is coordinated to me. I think the takeaway from the overall scores probably wasn't as surprising. I do, I don't want to echo. A lot of my thoughts have already been said, so I'll focus on things I haven't quite heard yet, which was I don't know how much of it is, the fact with there's been, these aren't the same 9 people who filled it out last year, but the results in some of these are either online and in line with last year's results, even though there's, and overall there's been a decrease in some areas. There was a market decrease from 2020 to 2021. I think what was more surprising for me was some of the language used in the comments to support the rankings. And I know that's not part of your slides, and that's fine, but all board members have received a copy of it. So that was the most surprising for me. And we've heard about trust, and we've heard about we've heard things about not feeling respected, and that definitely showed in the supportive comments. So I'd like to have further discussion about that this evening if possible. Yeah. Courtney.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add other than what many of my colleagues have shared. I would say, the theme that really stuck out for me was about trust. I think not just sort of trust. I think part of the issue is like trusting that we hold collectively good intentions, that we assume the best about one another when we show up to a conversation and share our perspective, but also trust in somewhat like of a literal way. There's a theme throughout the comments about trusting in confidentiality and trusting that conversations that we have that are, of a sensitive nature, whether through writing or through executive session, remain private, which certainly hampers our ability, I think, to be able to communicate honestly and openly. And, I think an important issue to unpack is this idea, I think, that Anne-Marie originally shared, and then Alyssa, you followed up on around the majority. And I think, sometimes it feels like we are so far apart on issues, and in particular, it doesn't feel as if the dissent is often voiced in a way that feels solution oriented. And that can feel very hard to find common ground in.
Thank you. Shannon, and then obviously then Chris.
So I don't want to repeat a lot of what's been said, but I wasn't surprised by the scores. I come from a position where believe that all of us are here in good faith, with good intention, putting students first, with passion and purpose. That's why we chose to do this volunteer role. That's why we chose to stand up and be a part of a collective voice for change. And so one of the things that came from me was, aside from the other comments that have been said, were perhaps finding that common thread, right? So most of the time, you know, there's a lot of conversations that we have where I believe that we have a common thread, we have a common foundation, but perhaps we haven't had the cohesion in the space to be able to come together to hear from each other in a way that's open-ended, to be able to come together, to be able to be wanting to be open-minded and listen, and also be forward-thinking and not be proactive to help collectively together find the solutions for us to move forward. And I think that in our hearts of hearts, I believe all of us, that's our prime directive. But the path forward and the way that we can do that, we can have that experience to be open to listen and to also being able to come together, is something that I think continues to resonate across the evaluation.
Thank you. And then Chris, obviously with the caveat that you weren't on the board when this was completed, but yet you do have a copy. I just wanted to get your take on it, since you're looking at this with a bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, thank you. And, yep, you said a lot of what I was getting ready to say. I did not fill this one out, and I will not fill out next year's evaluation. My time is short. You guys have committed yourselves for the last 3 years, your time on the school board, to work as a collective. And it's, from my standpoint, when I was on the board 3 years ago, one of the things that we had, which everybody is working towards now, which was getting the bonding together for for our buildings. And there were a couple of other things that we were fighting to do. And ideally, if we could identify as a group, just to commit to doing one thing for the rest of this year and get it done. Because I think everybody on this that's here right now would agree that our curriculum is something that we need to have. And I've heard it from not just people on the board, but people outside, is the honest God and bringing that forward. That is something that if we could do that, we would be able to move ourselves forward, move ourselves in a direction that we all could be very proud of what we could accomplish as a community. And so instead of finding differences, I think if we could all find a place where we could agree and just work together and say, that's what we're going to do, and let the superintendent or mandate that we get something done. And that's something that I think we have the ability to do. And we have talent here that can help drive that. But we consistently will try to put other things out on the table. And if we could find just one thing, and that's, I'm suggesting that is the one thing. And I apologize because I'm not going to be able to be in this conversation. I'm only here until 8 o'clock, or excuse me, 7:55. But I want to make sure that I just shared that.
All right, thank you. And then lastly, Ms. Wright.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments, because I think we probably are on the same page more so than we think that we are. But what I find is that we are a completely dysfunctional board. Not only are we dysfunctional, we are a rogue board. And we need to own up to that. I'm a coach, and so I look for solutions, and I go out and look, and I've been looking at other school districts who are faring very well, such as East Windsor. I've been looking at other board meetings, other leadership, maybe Mr. Penny or Charlene can come in and tell us about some of these districts that are functioning, really high functioning districts that are doing really well. But what we need to do for us, as far as I'm concerned, is, you know, just because you don't always offer a solution doesn't mean that the view is wrong. I think what needs to happen for us at this point is that we need to understand the role and the responsibilities of a board member. We need to understand the role and responsibility of the president. And I think because we've been in this pandemic and we haven't been able to get down to Atlantic City to learn the kinds of things that we need to do and that we ought to be a part of and how we ought to be doing things. Instead, we're doing things in silos. And when you operate in silos, you will never, ever move on. I've been sitting here watching this dysfunction, being a part of the dysfunction. And we have to call it like it is and come out of this mess a lot better than we came into it. And the other thing is we need to understand that when we're about to vote on things, we need to know about it before we vote about it. We can't bring things forward and say, okay, now we're going to vote on it. And nobody's been afforded the opportunity to really sit down, think about it, mull it over, and then come back with something that we have. And the other thing is we're lacking integrity and work ethic. We're not doing the things that we ought to be doing, and we're holding no one, including ourselves, accountable for what's going on. And we owe a whole lot more to our students, to our residents, our taxpayers. What we are giving them is not what they deserve. And that's including myself. We can all do a lot better, and we need to do a lot better. And again, this dysfunction, we're hanging on and we're sinking. And, you know, it's sort of like the house is on fire and we're saying, do you smell smoke? And I'll have some more things to say, but I'll just cut it at that point.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, Charlene, if you already want to sort of lead us through, I guess, what you heard and what's next, and we'll all listen if you want to moderate, if you will, for the next, until you're done, essentially, and just let us know. Thank you.
Sure. Just wanted to thank all of you for, you know, for your insights, for your honest feedback. And, you know, I think that it's important that everyone recognizes or is interested in wanting to, you know, continue wanting to get better and wanting to improve in this work and wanting to work together as a team. And I'm not going to click back to the PowerPoint, but the next slide I was going to show you basically says that, you know, that governance is essentially a choice. That, you know, it's saying that you don't get to pick who your, you know, who your fellow board members are. Said you may not like them, you may have run against them in heated campaigns, but once you get on this side of the board table, you are one board team. You work the way you help students is you do it as a team. The way you make a difference is you do it as a team. So you have to, you know, said as a board, you essentially have a fork in the road and you can make a conscious choice. Do you want to govern as individuals going in different directions, or do you want to govern as a team that is all motivated to, you know, to come together in that common, you know, I think it was mentioned that you need a common thing to kind of gather around. And a lot of you have said, you know, that common thing, you know, that you're all here for the right reason, for the kids, for student achievement, for advancing student achievement, for what's in the best interest of your students. So what work will enable you to do that and enable you to come together around that work? Ray, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that before we...
Yeah, you know, you guys were probably reading this and saying, could guess who wrote what. I don't have that luxury, so or that insight. So I'm just looking at this completely from afar a little bit. I do think I think Susan said it. You're all passionate, and when you're passionate about something, it's hard to compromise. It's hard to have those differences. So that's a hard thing to do. So I think you're gonna have to create a system here of communicating with each other in a very nice way, how do you disagree with someone but not be disagreeable? And I think that's something that you're going to each have to do individually. I looked at that where I think one of the goals that you should always have as a board is look at yourself too and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. What am I going to do to help foster a teamwork among ourselves? How am I going to say something even if I disagree with someone to get my point across? So I think those are some of the things. I think Chris hit on one good thing. Maybe if you start trying to find something that you can all agree on and work towards, at least start with that. Don't start with the things that you're going to disagree with and then go to something you agree with, because it starts to get personal after a while. And that's the other thing. If it becomes personal, it's hard to do governance because you're making decisions on personalities. So, and you shouldn't be making decisions on personalities. I disagree with this just because someone said it, board member A said it, so now I'm going to go the opposite way. So you have to find those ways to come together to build trust with each other. I do think you guys can do it though, because you are passionate. You do want to improve the education for your kids. So that were just a couple of the things that I saw from the outside. And trust is an issue. Look, for me, if I lose trust, it's twice as hard to get it back. And I think that's true for all of us. Once you lose trust. So I think that should be something that you should be looking at, is how can we build our trust up with each other? And I think that's how you're going to have to decide how you're going to communicate with each other at the board meetings and maybe at events and everything of that sort. Charlene can talk to you about setting board norms, but it's look, a lot of things we're doing are not natural. It's not natural to put 7, 9 people together with different backgrounds to try to come up with a major role is improving the education. So let's hope that we can start moving in that direction. I think we will, because I could sense the passion that all of you had just in your opening remarks.
Well, and this board has always made a commitment to training together. I think when I've been with New Jersey School Boards 8 years now, and I don't know that I've spent more time with another board who's involved in as many retreats as your board. And I know at times you've challenged me to come up with ideas and topics and things that your board was focused on. And so you are always committed to the work, committed to putting the time in. So now we have to figure out how to use this in a way that is effective. We always say that the standard we should set for ourselves as a board is, modeling behavior for our students. And as we look at the way we're conducting ourselves at our board meetings, as we look at the way that we're treating one another, always asking ourselves the question, is this the model that we would like to be for our students? And one of the things we always say too about the board meetings is that is your community's first impression about how your district is run. So if your board meetings are run dysfunctionally, then that is the impression that the public has about the way your district is being run. So recognizing that you have that responsibility to demonstrate that you are able to do your work and conduct your work in a professional and a respectful way that would make your students proud of the way that you are conducting your work, that's a standard that you need to think about and hold yourself to. So the question is, how do we get ourselves there? Ray had mentioned trust, and all of you, many of you have talked about trust when, as we were going through our comments, and, a lot of it is, I feel like we almost have to start taking baby steps, right? That trust comes in action. We have to agree on some actions, and then I need to trust you. We are going to build trust by all of us following through on what it is that we have agreed upon, so that then is that first step toward building trust. So what are I know Chris had said one thing. Maybe I was overly optimistic thinking we were going to get to 3 by the end of this meeting. 3 things we might agree on that we can set some actions for, come to an agreement on. But, you know, that's going to be our first step of saying, what are those, you know, couple things that we think are the most important things that can help us come together as a team? Like, what is it that's tearing us down that we need to stop doing so that we can move forward? Yeah, I see Anne Marie has your hand raised, right? So, jump it.
Yeah, thank you, Charlene. I don't want to interrupt, but I think you know, looking back on that experience, Chris, that was a 2-year effort to build, like we had very clear objective, we had very clear timelines, and we had the need to, you know, build those bridges with the community, you know, to get us to that point, right? So, you know, when you look at the poor marks on planning, I think as we've gotten more robust, and then, you know, the flip side is, what did we not do during that time that we were just trying to get money to pay for the bond, right? So, you know, really having clear goals, district goals that we can all agree on, and then really having ownership about the timelines and what our role is in making sure that that work is getting done might be a way to look at that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also think, as it relates to a goal, that if you can articulate those timelines to the public, because some of them have been discussed since 2015 or beyond before. So we just have to hold ourselves, come up with goals, come up with timelines, and be committed to allowing people to move forward in delivering on those goals. I don't want to say the same thing over and over, but if everybody is committed to that, I think everybody can walk away after they've served and feel like they've accomplished something. Otherwise, we're just going to keep, as a individuals and as a collective, just pushing, making dust instead of moving something forward.
Okay, go ahead,
Melissa?
Yeah.
I agree with the idea of trying to find some common goals. And I think that is a good first step. The history has been, though, that we have been lacking in finding the communication necessary to collaborate together. A lot of the times stuff has been dictated to us, and I'd love to find a way for that to stop happening and for us to really work together and collaborate. I mean, when we I think probably the best meeting we had was one where we were talking about the superintendent's evaluation, where we were all collaborative, and it was a collaborative nature, and we were laughing and joking and getting along. And there was, but what has been happening is that a lot of stuff is sort of told to us and not really collaborated on. And I am concerned because the word I'm not hearing is collaborative. And I think that that's a big word we have to work on.
I'm going to jump back
Hold on,
in.
Chris. I want to get others involved before I come back to you. Just want to, I guess.
I'm only jumping in
and
because I'm jumping out in a few minutes.
Right.
I just
Okay.
wanted to
So
say, I'm sorry to jump in.
Go ahead.
To jump in, but I think that some of the things that I'm hearing go back before this board, when I was on the board, and some of that it's the function of being the president or being the leadership, and leadership needs to learn how to lead a bunch of other people who are also leaders, which is a tough thing to do. And I'm not speaking about this group, I'm speaking about when I was on the board. prior to this. And it is a challenge for people to corral everybody and get everybody to inform each other and get everybody to agree just to have a meal together. And what are we going to eat? And where are we going to go? If we can find, so when I say one thing, I'm really sometimes breaking it down to as simple as that. And even if we just decide to virtually have a meal together, start with the basics, do something, and everybody can find a way to, as Alyssa, you said, laugh about something that everybody can agree to then move forward and take the next step. I found that with the board members who we were discussing, I ran against, and we agreed on very little before we got on the board. But by the end, we were agreeing on many things and were able to come to serious agreements on things that help the district. So, I mean, it's not about one person. It's about everybody working and leading, trying to work together. So I can't put this all on one person. We have to work and communicate with each other. So I'm gonna mute myself again.
Anybody else?
Y'all, I'll add, listen, we can sit here and we can have this conversation like this, for the next hour or two, and we have gone absolutely no place. We need additional focus and training. I'm telling you what we need. We need to understand what our objectives are for this retreat. This retreat is very, very important. And I think we're going to need a retreat after the retreat after the retreat. That's how much trouble we're in. And I think that unless we jump on it and we do the things that are necessary, it's gonna be bad. So I think that, clarifying and defining the role and responsibility of board members, that's what we need to hear from you, Mr. Penny. That's what we need to hear from you, Ms. Peterson. We also need to include in that the board president, because certainly our board meetings have not been run correctly. We have done some illegal things, I think, in terms of voting and resolutions and things of that nature. We definitely need some accountability. We also need oversight, training, and protocols because of the way that we have been leading. This board has been led. And so how do you hold administration accountable, ourselves accountable, children accountable, if we're not doing it ourselves? And so I think we need to move the discussion on to what we can do to begin to put things in place so that we can move on. And Charlene, whenever I've spoken to you, I've talked to you about teamwork. That's my basis. That's my background. I'm an award-winning coach, and I know how to put teams together. I know how to win with people. I know how to put people together who don't get along. This group is something else. Is altogether different. So we're coming from all different places, probably wanting the same kinds of things. But until we begin to put children first and what really counts for them, and we begin to look at the equity, and we begin to look at things that we ought to be looking at and voting on fairly and succinctly, we're still spinning our wheels, and the children are still where they are, failing. They're failing. And it's because of us and how we vote and what we bring to the surface here. And again, we are a dysfunctional board, so we can get past that. And when I say we are a rogue board, I mean it. We are a rogue board. I can't say it any more plain than that.
Okay, thank you. Shannon, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Charlene. So to board member Wright, if I may, since we have our esteemed guests, Ray and Charlene, here with us, perhaps, it might be beneficial if we have specific cited concerns that, since they are here with us and we have this special opportunity to maybe cite or explain explicitly what the concern is, or ask for feedback while we have them, to help maybe create a bridge. If there's misunderstanding, maybe that can get cleared up with them here with us. So if, I guess, for any of us, if there was something specific that there was a concern about for a question with Charlene and Ray with us, perhaps lifting that up to get to the point of what the concern is might help create that bridge to move forward.
So there was conversation, I guess, about the board majority and what that means. So I think, Anne Marie, that was what you brought up, right? So I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more, or kind of help us understand, what a little more about what the board is looking for there.
Sure. So some of this historically, and I know we want to look forward, but I do think I should share this with board members, is when I first got on the board, we had a superintendent whose skill set did not match the needs of the district. And it took several board members to come to that realization, bringing in other board members to try to build that knowledge base, having some more seasoned board members saying you have to give people time to grow and all that, so during that time there were significant shifts in the way we were doing work at the school, in the school district, collapsing levels, rewriting some of the curriculum, hiring some consultants to do cultural anti-bias training and all of these things. And there were many on the board that wanted to make sure that the community still had faith in where the district was going, even though many board members did not totally believe that the current leadership was going to get us there. And so during that time, there had to be a lot of conversations among people to say, here comes a resolution that we're all voting on, and we don't know who got what information in committee meetings. Which way are you leaning, so that we can feed it up and try to figure out, like, what are we going to say about this resolution? And if there were enough people that were anxious about, or the lack of information, we could convince the superintendent to pull the resolution. Or if it was, going to be a majority, it wasn't that the minority wasn't being listened to. It was just really trying to make sure that the community thought we were at least shepherding the district through this very, very difficult time. So I don't know if that's the right way to have done it back then. I don't know if we should have gone out and had, drag out disagreements with the superintendent in public, if we should have been hashing out every resolution during the board meeting. I don't know, but I know specifically that there were many times where I was tasked with calling board members and just getting a feel for which way are you going, what's happening, and how much effort do we have to put into making sure that this resolution, was good for our, that most board members felt was good for our students, good for our district, and we could get it passed in the public. So I don't know if that's the right way to do it, Charlene. It's a very difficult time when you come to find out your, superintendent, doesn't have the skill set and doesn't have the, the desire to, develop those skill sets, I guess. Oops. And then what is our role when we're trying to build confidence in our school district, but knowing that we still have a much different view of where we're going? I think that also comes into play. We're making these decisions.
All right, thanks. So I think, and I know, Ray, you have about 15 to 20 minutes. So I think to what Shannon said earlier about examples, while we have you here especially, that might be helpful. I think for me, we've heard so far that there's been, there are areas of improvement, I guess, with respect to, at least if it's not the perception, the reality of the role and responsibilities and leadership. So to the extent that whether it's probably beneficial it's probably best beneficial for examples of instances of areas of concern folks have with the board president and leadership as a whole, so that we can lift those up and have those conversations while you're here. I suspect at the end we're gonna all commit, as Chris said, and Charlene reiterated about three things: committing to things. I'll tell you now, one of the things I'm doing is committing to, be better at this role. So to the extent that there are complaints or not complaints is the wrong word, I'm sorry. Concerns, issues, comments about leadership, particularly with respect to the board president. This was, I don't know if this is necessarily the right time, but since we don't have Mr. Penny for much longer, I do want to take advantage of that.
I also think that you, in reading yourself about, I think Joanna said it. I think you all might have a little different perspective of what your role is as a board member. What is the role of the board member? I think Charlene can go over that with you. I think you probably know it, but I think you're in a difficult situation because I think you're a lot of strong-willed people here, and I think I haven't been there for the leadership, the board president leadership, so I don't know what the issues have been in that area. But I think that's also a lack of communication and trust. Not anything personal at that point. It's just that you guys, I think you question the motives of each other a little bit. So when you question people's motives as to why they're doing it, it's personal. And so we have to get beyond that. I don't know, Charlene, if you want to add anything to that. I think you're going to have to set a framework. Maybe if you have issues with some of the leadership, how do you express that to the leadership? Is it a private call and just say, look, I disagree with this? Do you bring it up at the board meeting? I think I think Johanna mentioned workshop. It's not just the training. You guys probably could have used an opportunity just to get to know each other as individuals, casually walking the floor, talking to each other, even having a cup of coffee together. Probably the pandemic doesn't help a lot of these things, trying to build a relationship virtually. Charlene, I know Alyssa wants to say something too, but I do want to say the other thing is, and I don't know the dynamics, but by reading it, it feels like there's a majority and a minority on every board or most boards. The minority feels they're not being listened to at all or respected, and the majority feels they are respecting the minority, and they're like, let's just move on. And that's the tension, is how do you move on? And I think the minority of the board, and I don't know who, I'm starting to sense some things now, but they feel they're going to be listened to. Now, also, if you're in the minority, sometimes you're not going to win all the wars. So, or any of them. So, I think Alyssa had her hand up first, right?
Yes, Alyssa, Susan, Johanna. You're muted, Alyssa.
You're muted.
Sorry, I totally forgot to unmute myself. I said I will let Miss Wright go, or somebody else. I
Well,
can.
then Susan's next.
Okay.
Thanks. I was just going to say, in addition to talking to us about the role of a board member, maybe you could also give us some more insight onto what the role of the executive committee is, so that we can understand what, in other districts, what sorts of things are delegated to the executive committee and what the board as a whole deals with.
Charlotte, do you want to take the, is
Sure,
their
I do.
executive committee different than? I'm not sure what their executive committee is.
I say, so most boards don't even have an executive committee. So when you were asking how yours is different, you have a unique, kind of governance structure of having 2 vice presidents. So again, that's something that I think there might only be 1 other district, maybe 2 other districts in the state that have a structure like that. Some boards have gone to a governance committee, and I'm sensing that that's probably what your executive board does. It's a group who's responsible for moving forward the work of the board. I don't know if that's what I guess I would need to know what your executive board does as well, but typically, say in a governance committee, they make sure you're getting, the calendaring the work for the superintendent's evaluation, making sure you're getting your board self-evaluation done, making sure you have board goals and that you're staying on top of those goals, that you're orienting your new board members, that you have, planning professional development for the board. So, committees should be doing the work of the board and helping the board advance its work. That's essentially why we have committees, is to take our work, and break it into meaningful parts so that you can, do deeper dives on certain parts of it. So that's what I would expect or think then that your executive committee should be doing, is looking at the work of advancing the work of the board. Johanna, I know you had your hand up, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, I mean, even when we talk about this board, the one thing that we didn't talk about is we're a bullying board. This is a board that bullies. And the only way you bully a bully is to bully a bully back. And when you see these things happening and you recognize them because of who you are and the training that you've had, it's not good. And when we're talking about, when I talked about the responsibilities of a board, when we're talking having a board meeting and we have resolutions that we need to vote on, and we bundle those resolutions as versus separating those resolutions and being able to vote on them individually as versus to voting on them in a group and putting really, really important things that were severed, that were not brought back together, and then to have to vote on them. It's a horrible, horrible miscarriage of justice as far as I'm concerned. And then I was the chair of, I'm the chair of FFT, which is the Finance and Facilities. And I'm having open meetings, of which I've talked with Charlene about before we even had the first meeting. And then we have a number of people to line up to say, board members to say that we don't need FFT meetings, finance meetings to be in public and the Open Public Meetings Act. And we find a way to make those illegal to have. But yet we'll have a board of the whole, a meeting of the whole for another committee. All committees should be open as far as I'm concerned, with the exception of personnel. So these are the kinds of things, the functions of a board that we need to get out there and put out in public and let people know what's going on. If I'm a taxpayer, I'm upset if I didn't get a final report from the finance committee to know where my money is going. And that is what's happening here. And when we're talking about being a rogue board, these are the kinds of things that we're doing. I could give you a number of instances. I won't. There are many, many things that we're doing that we should not be doing. And it doesn't, the bottom line is, it's not what you say or how you say it or what's right. Let's do what's right and let's continue to do those things. But when we have all of the board who feels that we shouldn't have open meetings for finance, my goodness, that's a problem. And if I'm asking as a board member for information, I should be able to receive it. I'm still waiting for information I've been asking for since I've been sitting on this board. And there have been times when I have had to go and have copies made of things, and I had to pay for the copies. So we have to look at what we're doing individually, collectively, and as a body. And if we're going to do the right things for our district, listen, this used to be one of the finest districts in the country, not alone, let alone the state. And we're not going to continue in that vein if we continue doing the same things that we're doing. You know, I retired as a school teacher in this district to run for the board to make sure that things were right. And we're calling on the New Jersey School Boards Association to sort of come in and sort of guide us, sort of like when you let your children grow up and they're going on, you're sort of guiding them along the path. We need to be guided. We need to learn that, you know, while everybody has different opinions and things of that nature, just think about, is it good for the kids? If it's good for children, then we vote accordingly. If it's not good for kids, we vote accordingly. And I think the taxpayers and the children deserve a lot more. I mean, we have private schools opening up all over the place. We have people taking their kids out of school. We have to do better.
Okay. Charlene, I'm going to be going. I had it here. This is your bailiwick anyway, but good luck. And if you do have another retreat, I'll be with Charlene. I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. We really
Okay.
appreciate the time and for you to stop by this evening. We really do. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm sure we'll be having another one and we will be in touch. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right. Bye now.
Hey, Shannon, I believe you had your hand up, right?
So I just, yes, so I know that we're all wanting to try to seek to how to be our best selves during this retreat. But I would challenge all of us in how we, the language that we use to move forward, if it really represents our best selves moving forward. I know that even at times I'm not the best with my language, but at the same time, I think that if we could maybe collectively maybe make a commitment while Charlene is here, that if we stick to maybe what we're seeing a need for improvement, how we're experiencing something that we would like to get improvement on, and how do we see a way forward on that, and maybe keep that in mind in some way to help us get to the point where we want to get to the end of the conversation. And I don't know, Charlene, if that sounds, if I'm on the right path of maybe what you're thinking.
Yes. You know, I think that, we've talked about a bunch of things, say we need to improve some things. So let's, kind of get started having the actual conversation. So, one of the things I guess that really struck me, Emery, when you were talking about that philosophy of, calling and seeing if you have enough votes and the confidence and people not feeling that collaboration is taking place, I feel like we need to adopt kind of a different philosophy about what the board meeting is supposed to look like and kind of what the mindset is that a board member is supposed to come to the board meeting with. One of the things that I always look at when I look at a board self-evaluation in the board governance part of it is seeing how the board evaluated itself in its stating that there is a climate where every board member feels comfortable speaking up and feeling heard and, and at the board table, because that's where your work takes place. So that, that is an area that the board evaluated itself lower. So I guess I want to just even kind of get back to that basic concept of saying that you can only be effective when you listen to each other. I should come to the board meeting with an open mind. I should come to the board meeting without my mind made up, because one of you could say something that will inspire me to look at this thing in a completely different way than how I first came to the meeting or was thinking that I was going to vote. What should be happening is that I should do my homework. I should come to the meeting prepared to have informed discussions at the board table. I should not come to the meeting with my mind made up already. I should come to the meeting prepared to be a contributor and have discussions. You know, one of the kind of the sayings that we have at New Jersey school boards is that you always get your say, but you don't always get your way. So you can't respect that you don't get your way if you haven't had your say. So we need to make sure then that we are looking at the situations that are before us as board members, as the board table is where we do our work. We are all individuals. Each one of you has so many skills and so many talents. I need to learn from you. I need to hear from you. Before I make my decision, I need to know what you have to say. You know, you are tasked with such an important responsibility of making the best decision for the students. The only way you can do that is when you disagree and you each come with different ideas, so that we know that that coin was turned over to every side, so that by the time it's finally time for the board to take a vote, we now know that we have had an engaged and informed conversation, listened to different opinions, and then are now ready to make an informed vote based on this conversation. So I see President Joshua, you had your hand up, so I will turn it over to you.
I just want to follow up on that. Can you elaborate the part about coming well-informed and having discussion? How much of that is committee versus public? Because sometimes, you know, the in-depth conversations do happen in committee. You know, the information is then disseminated via minutes and other conversations, so that a lot of times you're not so much showing up prepared. Not so much no one can change my mind, but I think that you're showing up with a decent understanding of what you're voting on that evening. And then obviously, yes, you may hear something that may sway you to at least either table it, or you know, we just had that at our Monday meeting. We got some information that, you know, we decided to table it instead of pushing forward. Or, you know, you may change someone may change their mind based on information that gets presented. So I'm just curious about at what point do you, and I don't want to say it's too late, because I guess theoretically it's never too late, but I feel like, you know, when you're working on something that's relatively weighty, an objection on a Friday for a Monday meeting gives folks time to digest it. Whereas, you know, an objection, you know, within a half hour of the vote doesn't always give folks that time. So can you just elaborate on when you say that piece? I just wanted to, can you just dig a little deeper for us? I think it will help all of us.
Sure. So, you know, if we think about the function of the committee, you know, it was mentioned that you could all meet together, you could all do the work together in public, but recognizing all the work that you have to do as a group, you've decided that the most effective way that you can do your work, or, you know, have your work done, is to work through standing committees and have the committees do, as you suggested, do those deep dives. So essentially, as a board, you have tasked the committees to do the work on your behalf. But that doesn't absolve you of, you know, needing to get the information, and, you know, the committees recognizing that it's their responsibility to, you know, make recommendations to the board, recognizing that each board member, when they come to the board table, has to cast an informed vote. So have I done the work? Have I provided those people that are not on the committee, have I given them the information to be able to cast an informed vote at the board table? And it goes back, I guess, to your point about, you know, as we talk about, you know, things that, you know, detract from trust, one of those things would be surprises. So ideally, we don't all have to agree. We may not want more information, but if I am thinking that, like, say, a recommendation that a committee has made is not a recommendation that at this point I don't think I'm going to support, it would be to kind of help build trust, to make the committee chair, the board president, you know, make them aware of that. But, you know, the first thing that I should do as a board member is to reach out to the committee chair and make sure I understand Why, why did the committee come to this decision? What other things did you talk about? Why do you think that in the recommendation you're going to make to the board that this is the best recommendation? And so that responsibility is on me, because you have different, different skills. Some of you have been on the board long time, some have been on the board not that long a time. So what information one of us may need might not be the same as what all of us need. So each one of us is tasked with coming to the board table with the information we need to make an informed decision. And we would depend on our committees to do the work for us, but then we need to make sure that we understand what that work was, and so that we can do our job at the board table. And then if we think differently again, goes back to building trust, that we should try and minimize surprises at the board table.
Thank you. One other piece we talked about, I heard it earlier, I believe it was Alyssa who talked about one of our best meetings being a exec session where we were discussing the superintendent's evaluation and, congeniality and laughing and et cetera, et cetera. I guess for me, I think I wholeheartedly agree with that, by the way, and I think most of us do. That was one of our better meetings. I would also say that our June and July, our last two public meetings have been, relatively smooth. And so for me, I think what I would wonder is, I don't know how we continue that, even when, there won't be, even if every vote isn't 9-0, I'm just looking forward to continuing that momentum, obviously forever, but at least, the rest of this year, just so, and I see Alyssa has a hand, but I just wanted to, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I'll just, maybe Alyssa should jump in first, sorry.
I mean, sorry, I know that there are rules around governance and how many people can be together at a time, but I feel like we have all not been in the same room together ever since we have been on this board, through the pandemic, through different circumstances, through all of that. And I know, I almost am like, we need to go out and get a drink, like, or something, like, I feel like that we need a time where we can not be talking about board stuff, but we can be together to learn about each other, outside of just a committee or something like that. I don't know the rules around that. Charlene, maybe you can help us with that or tell us, but I feel like almost we need to start as basic as sharing, as Chris Sabin said, sharing a meal together or something, because I feel like we need to start really low, and then build from there. And I don't know how we do that. I'm offering that up as, I'll host it at my house, like, if that's allowed. I don't know, but like, I almost feel like that's where we have to start from, a place of just all getting together in a non-board setting.
So, it's definitely is a challenge being a public body and a quorum being together, but, boards have tried to take, say, a retreat like this one and do it in a more relaxed, I just did one last week or a couple of weeks ago that was at the board president's house, and everybody was, it had to be open to the public, advertised to the public. The public was able to come. Everyone was sitting out by her pool, talking. And that's how we did the retreat. So, there needs to be, I guess, we have to recognize that we're a public body. We have to do our work in public, but can we do it in a way that, would be more relaxed? And, a lot of times retreats are sometimes at a setting other than your regular board meeting. It has to be somewhere accessible to the public, but at, not formally sitting around your board table, and, kind of remove some of the formality so that you can have conversations. And I can even say some of the retreats that, where were done with your board, to me, were best when we were all sitting around a big table, and then sometimes would break into smaller groups and have smaller group conversations, and then all come back together again and kind of sharing work. So like say, hopefully we'll be able to get into a situation where you can have that time to come together and sit around the table and work on things. And, you know, I think you're right that this has just been another example of you not having that opportunity, that it's had an impact on your group. So I think, you know, I think that's a great idea, that the board should commit to whatever, you know, whenever its next retreat is going to be, to consider it, you know, to be in a way that will allow for, you know, the board members to have a more informal setting.
Thank you. One of the things you talked about, I know something we've heard about is communication. And I think some of that is the lack of in-person and the availability of that for now. And we know there are rules around email as well. Is it possible to talk a little bit of just about the communication, obviously, dissemination of information via email, and you know how that, I don't know other ways. You know, I think for me in my day job, you know, reply all is like the default, and it's that's the complete opposite here. So how can we work to communicate? You know, one of the things I see as my role is disseminating information. But you also have to sort of foster communication through that as well. So just, if you could talk a little bit about that and how that would be helpful for us, because I do think from what I read that there was definitely concerns about information sharing and you know, communication generally.
Sure. I mean, I think that you know, articulated the challenge of the fact that, you know, similar to the restrictions we have, you know, meeting as a public body, we also have restrictions communicating as a public body, you know, with there being the caveat that if a majority of the board is involved in a two-way conversation, be it email, be it text, be it whatever way, that can be perhaps construed as a meeting. So we have to be mindful of that. So that is why, you know, the kind of the guidance we have from the School Ethics Commission is that when we do communicate, it has to be one-way communication. You know, there was just a case last year of a board member who, there was a member of the public that was had sent an email to the board. That person emailed the whole board. A board member was thinking he was just going to respond to the fellow board members, hit reply all, and ended up involving the member of the public in that communication that involved some conversation that had taken place in executive session that this person had reiterated. So again, there was that caveat that the School Ethics Commission said, you have a responsibility to be mindful of your communication, and, you know, that not, you know, making sure that a majority of the board is not ever involved in two-way communication. So recognizing that that's the case, then you should be, you know, using email to push out one-way communication to make sure then, like you say, that as the president, you are pushing out information that the board members would find to be helpful, but it can't be used as a dialogue for the board to replace conversations that should be taking place at the board tables.
And
Karen,
so to that end, I'm sorry. To
No,
that,
go.
I just want to follow up to that end, because we talked about, you know, I think one of the things that's coming out of this so far is, you know, probably refining our board goals to accomplish some of the, you know, some of the smaller things that we've talked about. You know, something as simple as, you know, committing to finding that one thing and doing it and putting a timeline. That's something I've heard multiple people say this evening. I guess my question is collaborating via email. So, when I'm trying to schedule a meeting, I think I can say, are you available this day? Right. And then people would respond individually, et cetera, et cetera. I perceive, generally those get high hit rates, and I don't, most of the time I get responses from most of the people, enough to sort of move forward with a decision. On other sort of documents, if you will, where like, here's something we're looking to do, here's a draft, if you will, please, add comments as you see fit. Those don't tend to get a lot. And then when they don't, am I supposed to interpret that as no one has anything, so move forward? Or is it, is it send it again, but then, is it still one way if I'm sending a reminder about the same information? So I'm hesitant to do that as well. Just what are your advice, if you will, on, collaborating on documents via email, to be succinct?
So I guess to me, I would put that back to the group to find out if they, what they feel would be a more effective way to do that, recognizing what you have to work around. And then, Aaron, I know that you also had your hand raised. So I don't know if your point is set, if we should finish this topic first, or is your point relative to this? Or okay, so I will throw, I will open it up to the group to see if there is a way that you feel you would like to receive communication, and when you're asked to comment on something, is there a more effect, what way is effective to you to make that happen?
I mean, I'll say, like, I believe as a board member, it's really on me. And I know that there are some weeks where I have more bandwidth than others to really go through my emails with a fine tooth comb and spend the time that I'd like to being able to review. But I also recognize that when I'm not able to do that in a timely manner, that's on me. I guess it's no different than how I would approach a collaboration via email in my work life, right? I think sometimes when it's something that is in particularly high stakes, a nudge has helped me to prioritize and make sure that I, prioritize a particular email or a particular document in a timely manner. But I would say in general, as a board member, I view that as my responsibility to review, and if I have comments, to leave those comments in a timely manner.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, it's also wonderful when you can get information in a timely manner to get it back. We all have jobs. I know the president likes to think that I'm retired and that's all I do. But in actuality, I'm redirected, and I'm probably working harder and more hours than most people sitting here. And so if you think that all I have to do is sit home and go through emails, but it would be wonderful if we got things in a timely fashion. And in terms of discussing things with board members, I think it's important if we're looking at something new that the president or one of the executive board members will hit up a board member to let them know what we're thinking about and what's going on. I don't generally get that courtesy. I used to get that courtesy, or maybe we haven't done enough of these things for that to even happen. So it may not have even happened in terms of something really, really vital coming through that we need to sit down and discuss as a board. And in terms of confidentiality, I think everybody should know what that means. We took an oath when we sat on this board. I know that I used to get a lot of information, Chris Sabin as well. We would get it in the streets. People would tell us what was going on the board as we were sitting on the board. That's where I got most of my information from. And so when we say things are confidential, people have friends and people talk, and they feel like if I tell you something, that's it. And that's because we don't get the real grasp of, if it's confidential, it's confidential. That's exactly what it means. It means to keep it to yourself. A secret's no longer a secret when you tell someone. That's what you tell your children. And so, we have a long way to go. This is a start. We need some more time. It's going to take a lot for us to get ourselves together. I'm glad to hear everything that my board colleagues had to say tonight, and it's given me some impetus to think about things in a different light, the way things are moving. But I also know that we need to adhere to laws, to governance, and do the best that we can do when we're operating on behalf of children. And so we want to keep that going. I think we do need another retreat. This was just that first conversation. And I know the pandemic has been hard on everyone, not being able to sit in a room and get to know one another and things of that nature, but we should know what we're here for. And I think that that will take precedent over the things that we need to do. And the other thing is, a lot of things can be misinterpreted. That people say and taken in the wrong vein, because you've already come in with tunnel vision as versus to having periphery. And that's what we have here. Everybody comes in with their mind made up, and that's it. There's no breathing room. Everybody walks in lockstep, lockstep, lockstep. And it'll be nice to see people think on their own and have an opinion of their own.
Thank you. Okay, Erin, you've had your hand up for quite a while here, right?
Hi. Just thinking about the last comment with confidentiality and just feeling like with this board, confidentiality just doesn't always exist, that you will see things on Facebook, like when we had a board vacancy, a member of the public noted that we had a board vacancy and the name of the person and, you know, how their application was submitted. That was at least 24, 48 hours before all the names were released. Going back to comments about being collaborative, I feel like board meetings are gotcha sessions. I haven't brought that up in my feedback, where sometimes it feels performative, that we're not collaborating, we're not having discussions or sharing information beforehand, that we wait until the board meeting to share that information. And then it feels like we're trying to force people to change their vote on the fly based on information that we don't know about ahead of time. If I have something that I want to discuss that I need more information, I'm going to ask about it before the board meeting. I'm not going to wait until then and just hold up the process. So I guess how do you balance that? How do you what's the difference between being prepared? I get what you're saying about not having that vote in mind, which is very interesting to hear you say that, Charlene, because I'm usually a person that does have their vote in mind, because I see it as part of my responsibility to do the work before a board meeting and to review all the information and make a decision. It is difficult for me in particular to come into a board meeting and someone brings up something that I've already done the work. I would prefer that we had that discussion before the board meeting so that I can think it over and do any additional research that I need to do. That's what I mean about it being a gotcha session.
Well, and I think that goes back to the no surprises, right? That we, and then that again continues how to erode trust, that, your board meetings should not be a gotcha, but should be the opportunity for you to collaborate and learn from one another. And like you said, do your homework, and if you have questions, ask them ahead of time so that everyone can come prepared to discuss whatever it is that like you said, that you, rather than wait and have it be thrown at you at the meeting and then you haven't had time to prepare for that. We're best when we are all, when we're all prepared, when we're all working together, and we are not going to be blindsided. So I know President Joshua, you had your hand up first, and then I can see that there's a few more up. So
Mine is down, so I can read. I have the queue open, so it's Alyssa, Shannon, Johanna.
I would say that even when questions are raised prior to meetings, sometimes the questions are dismissed as, well, you should have raised it sooner, or you know, or it's, you know, there doesn't seem to be a way. I am struggling to figure out how to make it so that concerns can be raised and they are acknowledged, at least, because we have, I mean, personally, I've tried sending an email about it and then nothing happens, or nobody responds, and then I'll send an email and then be told that, oh, you know, it was, you didn't send it, it was, you know, you sent it only a few hours before the meeting, and then, you know, then and then I'm told that, you know, your voice, well, it doesn't really matter because we have the votes, so why even bring it up? And so when you have these types of situations where it's at least personally, I feel like I have tried talking to people and having conversations and doing all the things, and still getting met with comments and behaviors that have been called out by other board members and members of the public for not being appropriate back at you. It makes it hard for you to move forward. And I'm not sure how we do that, because as you were saying, Charlene, there should be discussions had. There is a reason we have a discussion period in you know, after a policy. And so while some people might say it is a gotcha, which is not the case a lot of the time, I think a lot of these conversations need to be had open in public so that people can understand where the concerns are, or what's going on, and be as transparent as possible. And when you're doing all these things behind the scenes, it erodes the public's trust. And I do believe we should try to be as transparent and open as possible. But I would love suggestions on how that can occur in a way where it doesn't become like a problem, which it is now.
Okay, it looks like, and I believe that that's something that we will definitely talk about. And I, you know, feel like the group is the one that needs to help, you know, you all come to an agreement on what that should look like. So Johanna, I think you were next in terms of having your hand up.
Yeah, I just think you shouldn't shouldn't have important topics discussed in emails. I think that, you know, as I said, a lot can be misinterpreted, especially tone. And I don't understand why asking questions is wrong. You don't know people's schedules. You need time to think about what someone else is saying. That all stems from mistrust. It all stems from mistrust, because if it was someone else bringing up concerns, the timing should not be an issue. Again, the majority focuses on who and not what is being said. And if you're bringing some things up, I don't look at things as a gotcha. I look at things as I caught it, you know, before it gets out. So your gotcha is my caught it. So there's a huge difference. And if you look at the things that people are saying, and you say to yourself, you know what, this kind of makes sense, as I have done, and changed my mind on things. But we don't have that capability right now. We're still in the infancy of whatever this is. And we need to go on and crawl and start walking, and then getting those big steps so we can take one step after another. But don't look at everything as a gotcha moment, because you may be wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. That's why we have erasers on pencils, because people make mistakes. But the thing is, if you know you're wrong and you're going to go on and keep going into that wrong direction, oh, then I'm going to check you, because it's wrong. and you know it's wrong. So I'm not a gotcha person, because I'm a straight no chaser person. I'm gonna tell you like it is. I don't go around 10 blocks and say what I have to say. But if I catch something and I put it in an email to the board, it's to the board. So I don't know how an email becomes a gotcha when you're sending it to your colleagues, so that you can tell them what you're thinking and why you're thinking the way that you are, and ask questions. And I'm a questioner. And I encourage my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren to always question. If you want to know the answers, you got to ask the questions. It's as simple as that. And I'm a questioner, and I will continue to do that. And I hope you guys don't take it as a sign of a gotcha from anyone, because I don't take it that way from any of you.
Good, thank you. Okay. President Joshua, it looks like you were the next one to have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm back. So my question, two things I think that I've heard, and I guess I'm going to add a third to that based on Ms. Wright's recent comment. One, what is the difference? I guess, can you talk about the difference between asking questions and then suggestions? Because I think, for example, asking questions, in advance or towards the end of, not end, but asking questions, I think is one thing. But when I think about when we can either table a motion, or whether it's to vote on it, table it, or revise it and then continue to vote like in real time. I think I think for me, when there is not so much of a question, but a suggestion as to we should do it this way instead, like I think to me the more appropriate thing would be to table and have further discussion versus let's change it on the fly and then vote, right? Without, when it's something substantive, right? If we're talking about a missing word here or there, things like that in resolutions, I understand that. But I think when we're talking about substantive policy changes, you really shouldn't be about let's make a change to this substantive policy now without having it, go back through policy discussion. I think, last night, or this week, I should say, we sort of saw that in action. So I was not surprised. I was pleased with that that outcome and resolution, if you will, of just let's put it aside and let's do more work and try to get it right. The second thing I have is about the discussions in public versus private. We frequently say, board meetings are not so much private, that's not the right word, versus committee or, executive session or amongst the board. We frequently talk about meetings being in public, but not necessarily for the public. That's something we all struggle with because you're sitting in a room or on a screen. And to Erin's point earlier about, gotcha and performative, what responsibility, I guess, do we have to, whether it's informing the public versus, I guess, being repetitive, right? Because if a question's been asked in committee and then answered, asking it again in public to get the same answer doesn't, maybe one person may look at it as informing the public, but I think others may look at it as I said, maybe even performative or repetitive, or just not a good use of our time in the meeting. And then the third thing was about communicating through email and gotcha versus I caught it, which I actually like, by the way. I may use that. But what is I guess, at what point is there a responsibility? Like if you've had something for a week, I don't think anybody, I don't expect anybody to just automatically be on the emails, but there has to be some sort of, and maybe that's something we put as a goal or a standard or a norm or whatever, where responses are, within X amount of hours, whether it's 72 hours, weekends, whatever. Because I just think that the work slows down with the last minute questions that make everyone want to revisit something. And I don't, we want, as much as we want to get things right, we also have an obligation to get things done. And so how do we, do you have experience with boards that have some sort of SLA, if you will? And, my world would call it SLA, where anticipated response times are X. Do you know boards that do that, and has that shown to be effective?
Yes, I think for the reasons that, we've talked about earlier of all the other competing, forces for your time, and still recognizing the importance of the board's work. And I think, someone else had said, I don't always know how important this is. So I think that you should have a way to identify the importance of something and then identify a certain amount of time that the response, and you've agreed as a group, like you said, be it 72 hours or whatever, recognize then that that's the window. Like if something is, say, maybe high importance, then with this amount of time I need to respond. If it's lesser importance, maybe I have more time to respond. But I think as a group, you should identify what that is that will work for you, and then everyone agree and understand that that's the process that you're going to follow. And I think that that's perhaps where the difference is, we're having these conversations now, but then the next step needs to be the next time the group comes together, of actually determining what these processes or procedures are going to be that the board is going to follow, and then hold ourselves accountable to doing that. So, right now, I think we're kind of identifying those areas. And then in terms of your question about, the public and whether this is the board's meeting in public versus the public's meeting with the board. So I think, some of that is, I guess, recognizing what is our responsibility. What does the Open Public Meetings Act say is our responsibility to the public? And it is that the public has the right to be, to hear, decisions that are going to be made that would impact them. So if we think about the fact that a committee is not making decisions, a committee is making recommendations. So that recommendation that comes forth from the committee for board consideration that results perhaps in a resolution on the agenda, that then is now what's going to impact the public. Now what we're going to talk about, what we're going to vote on, that's now what the public has the right to know about. If we have talked about something and it's never going to come to be, it's not going to be something that's the board's work that we're moving forward on, you can say in full disclosure, that the public has the right to hear everything we're doing, and perhaps that's not wrong, but in terms of the efficiency of your work and what the Open Public Meetings Act says, that when we're a public body, what does that mean? And it means that the public has the right to know about and attend all of our meetings, and to, listen to business that's going to impact them. So only the full board having full board conversations and voting on something is what can impact the public.
It's Susan, Shannon, Alyssa.
Okay, thanks. The conversation sort of moved away from it, but I just wanted to get back to what we were talking about with comments on policies at the sort of last minute, as chair of the policy committee, because I love getting comments on policies, and I ask for them for months before we vote on something. And it's not so much that I take last minute things as a gotcha, but I just want people to know that when I get those comments, there's like a process we need to go through to sort of assess them and look at what Strauss-Esme says, look at, excuse me, what the former board policy says, maybe look at what the statute says, look at what other districts are doing. So when they come in at the last minute, it's hard to evaluate them because there isn't time to do all of those things, especially in the course of a meeting. So I sort of send emails all along the way over the course of months as these things are coming up, and appreciate when people can send the comments as soon as possible so that we can address them in committee.
Okay, looks like it's Shannon next.
Thank you, Charlene. I just want to acknowledge and say thank you. You have always been a really great resource. I just want to acknowledge that, and supporting us in this endeavor. I know that it's not easy at times, but I just really want to acknowledge that. So thank you. Actually, it's not a question. It's more of a pivot, if I may, to Ms. Butler. I know Ms. Butler, I know you're acting as board secretary tonight, subbing in for Andrea. But I guess my question is that just for clarification, because I know we've heard there's been some comments about you know, if we are having legal meetings, if we have done things that perhaps are not on NGSB protocol, and since you both are here, would that be something that we could address, even if briefly, if appropriate?
If there are issues, we can certainly address it. If there are specific things that can be raised, if an individual who's raising the concerns does not have the specific date and time or date available, if that can be provided by email at another time, that's fine. But if the information is available, we can certainly discuss it. It can be raised tonight. I don't know if it's the best use of Charlene's time right now. We can defer to her to see if she wants to include that as part of her presentation.
I would say that you know, to me, the purpose of tonight, you know, is for the board to have conversations that the board needs to have with the intent in, you know, I think that we are seeing steps that we are needing to take. You know, they look at different stages of teams, and the first stage is forming. I think we're in the forming stage, right? That we are kind of trying to form kind of, you know, norms that we need to talk about, to work together, to, you know, continue to kind of hash out, you know, most effective ways for us to communicate together as a group. And I just feel like right now we're just kind of putting on the table what those things look like, and hope that next time that we come together, it can take a more concrete form. So wanted to
Alyssa and then Courtney. Sorry.
So I think one of the things that we have talked about or heard multiple times, I guess, and we rated ourselves sort of poorly on, was planning. And when we're seeing things for the first time when we're getting the resolution, or we're, you know, and I'll use an example like the changes in committee that we ended up tabling for more discussion tonight about, you know, the first time that I heard about it was in a resolution. Like, nobody would ask me, do I want to switch committees or what my preferences are. It makes it hard for stuff like that to occur. And so I think that, you know, bigger items, as Ms. Wright and others have said, I really believe we should be collaborative in nature, even if it has to be behind the scenes. And I also think one of the problems that happens is that a lot of the times we don't see as a board all the resolutions, all the minutes from the committees, all of that until almost the last minute. We are, you know, for a board meeting, we're not getting that information until basically Friday afternoon. And then sometimes the minutes are not coming to us until Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you know, a few hours before the meeting. So as much as I try to stay on top and be prepared as much as possible, I would hope that in our planning, we could work for a way to get stuff more ahead of time, so that allows for everybody to, you know, not have to spend the entire weekend looking for things or trying to catch up because an email comes through that they've changed something at the last minute. And it makes it hard, especially when important documents like the resolutions are getting put on our plates on, say, a Friday afternoon, and we're voting on them on a Monday. And a lot of the times we might not have been involved in the process or even knew that they were going to happen.
Okay, so do you have, as a group, like a certain day that you try and have your committee information done by, like a certain amount of time prior to the board meetings? Like, is there a process in place and it's not perhaps always being followed? Is that what I'm hearing? Or is there not a process? I guess if someone could clarify that.
Yeah, allow me. I'm sorry, Courtney. Of jumping ahead. I just wanted to respond to this. I think so. What we have is that right now our agenda setting meetings are the Wednesday before our board meeting. Right now, because of that schedule, there was a couple of changes. Right as it sits right now, the policy committee meeting ends up being immediately after that. So while we know what will be on the agenda for the other three, personnel, finance, and excuse me, CNI, curriculum and instruction, we have ideas, but we're not, the policy committee is not solidified as terms of which policies are going to be brought forward until after that that meeting. So we're now working to change that and reorganize the schedule so that every committee meeting happens before the agenda setting meeting. The agenda setting meeting right now end up getting tentatively will be pushed to Thursday, which is not ideal, but with the current scheduling of having, I think now will be personnel will be the Wednesday before, giving time for those resolutions to be digested before the agenda setting meeting is probably where we'll end up landing for the rest of the year. And that's something that, that Dr. Tell and I have talked about in terms of what's the best schedule and what's a good cadence between getting all the information available so that there aren't a whole lot of changes from when the committee meets to the agenda setting. That's frankly been one of the challenges we've had with personnel meeting relatively early in the month in advance of our meeting, is that quite a few things change. We've seen something similar with our finance committee meeting relatively early. And then if there are additional resolutions that come through, the committee may not have had a full chance to discuss it. And some of them are relatively routine, some are not. So we're trying to find that balance so that the committees have fruitful discussion and not a lot changes from when the committee meets to when the agenda setting meeting happens, and then therefore before our general meeting where we're voting on all these things. So that's where we are right now. I think what makes it, and so I just talked about the challenge when how we set that. I do think that we have to also, when we talk about resolutions, so what I try to do is every month put out sort of a preview of what's coming, and I really focus on the changes from the committee's meetings because those are we spend a lot of time on that. So I push that out. I tend to push that out Friday. If I can push it out earlier, I will. But at the latest, I push it out Friday. Once or twice, I think I've had to push it out later for. But I try to push it out as early as possible to give people that opportunity to really focus in on, here's things that happen in the committee, here are things that are coming up that didn't necessarily were discussed but not finalized until after the committee. And I'm welcome to feedback on those little memos that I push out. If there are ways that they can be improved, please let me know. I'm happy to do so, and I try to break it out as detailed as I can by committee, by things that are not necessarily in a committee. I call them more general things, such as committee realignment, since that's come up. I wouldn't put that in it's not under a committee section of the meeting. It's under more of this is something we'll be voting on that affects all of us. The other thing I just want to add on quickly is that there's more time needed for certain things than others. Something as, I think 72 hours to review committee realignment is more than enough. 72 hours for a detailed policy may not be enough, considering the availability of time and questions you may have. So I understand that. But I think that, Member Winfield said it a while ago, like having a little bit of grace and understanding that some things do happen. We are, short in the business office right now, for example. So having a little bit of understanding that things aren't where we want them to be, but and we're not excusing it, but we have to, instead we don't want to necessarily penalize, right? We need to be flexible and while also trying to stay within, the parameters that we've set for dissemination of information. So I'm sorry, I said quite a bit there, but I wanted to outline the process as well as the potential changes to the processes to give you the fuller picture. So if you have feedback on that, it'd be very helpful.
So I guess the only thing that I would add, and perhaps it already takes place, but it's great that you have that agenda review meeting, because that's not something every group does, and I think it's really important for the board president or any of the leadership team to be part of that. And I guess I would ask that kind of your role in that be to look at it through the lens of, as you go through the agenda, has this been discussed in the committee? Do the board members have the information that they need? I can think back to when I was board president and would sit with the superintendent. If something was on the agenda, and I would say, the board committee hasn't really had time to discuss this yet. Is it possible this can be pushed off? If not, can somebody come and give the board a press, look at everything through the lens of what information does the board need to make, so you're kind of there on the board's behalf to look through the agenda to make sure that the board has the information it needs, and then work with the superintendent to figure out how you can best accomplish that while still, best moving the agenda items forward that need to be moved forward to do the work of the districts.
Yeah, so I see Dr. Taylor has his hand up, so maybe it would be a good point for him to chime in. But I just want to add one little piece that you wouldn't know, right? That part of that meeting is it's the executive committee, and the way it's structured is so that there's someone from the executive committee on all of our standing committees, so that one of the three of us has insight as to this was discussed in committee, this was not. Even if there's someone from the SLT who are also on that call, they would have that answer as well. But approaching it from a board member perspective, sometimes we said, hey, this wasn't discussed. Can somebody put together a memo to inform us of what this is about, so that more board members can be informed? Because this does seem like something that people would have questions on in advance. And so if we can sort of try to get ahead of it as much as possible, like what questions do I anticipate, just from my feel of talking to people and understanding the types of questions they tend to ask, what information can we, what can you provide us that will make it helpful? So that's my perspective. Maybe this is the time where Dr. Taylor chimes in about how he sort of disseminates it to us. Sorry, y'all.
So good evening, everyone, again. And what I would just say is, we could probably have an entire retreat session about committees, right? And about exemplars of committees and best practices of committees. And when I first arrived, there have been a lot of shifts in the committees. And we tried to look at it from the perspective of building the committee structure and the calendar to have enough time, to have a reasonable amount of time for the committee liaison, which is the admin side from our perspective, to type up those minutes with their team and get them back to the committee to review, and then produce them after the chair had to review them. And we're a big dynamic district. There's lots of things happening all the time. We all know that. And so trying to find that sweet spot where we're not leaving important things off of the agenda because of the timing of the committee meetings, and also having enough lead time so that any board member who wants to review minutes of meetings that they were not in would have the time to do that, is definitely a challenge, because sometimes there are tough decisions when we have to leave things off the agenda. And so I think, and hold them off until the next committee meeting, or if they are of the utmost importance, being able to send out emergency communications about them. And I think that I think it would be helpful for all of us, in my opinion, to have a singular meeting when we're fresh about committees, and maybe Charlene or her colleagues could have a presentation about it, what it means. And as has been said many times, we haven't had the sessions in Atlantic City over the last 2 years almost now, and some of that stuff, I think some folks bring a perspective of the committee is making the decision to move something forward. And that's not how I was trained, right? We of course want our committees to support the work that we're doing. We want the committees to be excited and to wave the flag that this was a great meeting, this is great information, great things coming for our kids. But there might be challenges where we don't agree, right? And so what happens then? And what is the role of the committee? And when we're in a committee with the chairperson, et cetera, when that meeting is over, what is the expectation of those board members in that committee, right? Do they, all those type of things I think are there's some assumptions there that might not be the intent, right? And I think that part of what can, I think, make us more efficient and effective would be to have some time carved out to talk about that. This is kind of a downtime for us. And even thinking about when the minutes are produced, the process for that, right? Because if I'm typing the minutes, giving them to a chair reviews and gives them back to me, and I do a last edit and give it to the rest of the board, that's 3 days, 4 days of time. That's slowing down the amount of time that the board members have to review the information. And I think a final piece of that puzzle is, as a couple of our board members have said this evening, the roles and responsibilities, right? That a board member, how is it framed from the New Jersey School Board Association, the responsibilities of the board? When I go to a board meeting and I look at the agenda that I'm voting on, ideally, how much should I know about these resolutions, right? These resolutions are being brought forward through a process to get here, right? Through an administrative process, through a committee review process. What should be my comfort level as a board member who is not on a committee, right? And who is not on this committee, and now I have a resolution. I think that we talked about the whole trust angle before, right? That what gives me comfort in knowing that I'm okay to vote on this, right? I have 3 kids at home and a full-time job, and I couldn't read all the minutes and all of everything, but I check my emails and I trust my fellow board members. Am I protected? How protected should I feel as a board member that I can vote on something that I'm not extremely familiar with, right? And I think that is a key that during my time here, at least, that I've seen presented on other places, that I think could be helpful, right? That there's a mountain of responsibility, but there's also a level of reasonableness when it comes to this volunteer position that these folks are taking on here, that will probably be helpful for everyone to hear if that opportunity to discuss that, was put forward.
Thank you. It sounds like we're putting a lot of topics together for our next meeting, right? Yeah. But committees is certainly one that all boards, continue to further refine the way that they do it, and continue to talk about better ways to get the information and the scheduling. So I think that it sounds like this is definitely something that would be of benefit to this board to have that conversation. Someone else had a hand up too. Okay, you're done. So we have been a little over, what has it been, almost 2 hours now, I think, that we've been having this conversation. So I just would kind of like to leave it with, recognizing now that we, have the understanding that, we have put some things on the table. We now perhaps have a better understanding of where each one of us, where our different thoughts are. And now recognize that it's our responsibility then as a group to come together again to kind of, norm this work a little bit and, kind of further define things that we agree that will help us move forward as a group, by putting some, processes in place that we all agree would be of the group's best interest. Is there anything anyone else feels like they would like to share or think would be helpful for the group before we come together again? And, and I think I also, I think Johanna, you had said, and somebody else said, I'm going to think differently now about what I do, or at least put some responsibility on myself to continue to help this group and to do this work. So I would challenge everyone to have that same thought and think about what you can do. How, we say that we help our children as a team. So what can you do to help make this be a stronger team and a better team, and everyone challenge yourself to that responsibility? So, okay, I see, President Joshua, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would like before and obviously I'll be in touch with you in terms of scheduling another one. I'm thinking August to sort of keep the momentum going. I don't want this to, I don't want to lose where we are. I think we are moving in the right direction. I want to get back to that. I want to stay focused on that. So I know that, sorry. So I'll be in touch with you about that. So I think the only thing for me that would be that I would appreciate, I know we talked a lot about communication and dissemination of information. So if folks want to email me, or the executive committee generally, about ideas and thoughts or ways that they feel communication and dissemination of info can be improved, I would greatly appreciate it. That's one of the things that definitely came out. Plenty of things that came out of the retreat, not so much out of the self-evaluation, and I think that we will probably touch on some of those more during the next part of this. But I think, in the immediate term, that's the only request I would have from the rest of the board.
Okay, well, I think perhaps our work for tonight might be finished, and I hope that you all feel good about the opportunity to, I feel like you all sat and listened very respectfully, and everybody, I hope that you learn from one another's perspectives, and I appreciate the fact that everyone took the time and everyone is really interested in the work that you have to do and continuing to work, toward doing it more effectively as a team.
Ms. Wright, and then Courtney, I know you had your hand up earlier. Are you sure you're good? You're positive? All right. Go ahead, Ms. Wright.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Charlene, for coming. I also want to thank Ray Penny, who has already gone, and I'm happy that we're going to continue with the dialogue.
Okay. Alyssa, and then Ms. Butler has something.
I would also like to thank you and say maybe drinks in groups of 3 at my house. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. We could rotate through. I'm just offering. I've got wine. I've got a non-alcoholic for people who are saying, I understand. But I feel like we need to find a way to do something that is not school related.
Yeah, one of the things that Charlene and I, oops, sorry. Are you done? I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's so hard. I think also one of the things we all have to realize is in this virtual environment, at times we look like we're interrupting each other. And it's so hard to make the distinction as to when somebody's done talking versus not because of delays and stuff. So I think that is something I do it at times, and I will admit to it. And, we all have to have grace in some of respects to that. But you can go ahead, Tahir. I'm done.
No, obviously cameras help with that, right? So I agree, and thank you. I was going to say, Charlene, one of the things you talked about was that the groups of 3 thing does work, and I guess that's how you have facilitated some of your in-person retreats recently. So maybe that's, to the extent that we're comfortable and we can find a place and pull it off, maybe that's something we can consider if it's not, this immediately following one in the not too distant future before the year is up. So Ms. Butler, muted.
I thought I had hit it. My only comment is to just remind everybody when you're doing the emails to Board President Joshua that you are mindful of not violating the Open Public Meetings Act. So make sure that you're not communicating back and forth and back and forth. That's all.
All right. Thank you again. So I guess on behalf of all of us, thank you, Charlene, for joining us this evening. I will be in touch with, once I get some sort of dates from the rest of the board about a future retreat sometime in August. We also have to do district goals, so maybe that's a good combination to have. We'll work that out. Ms. Butler, I believe you have to make a motion to, go into recess to go back to the WebEx for the action and then the public speaks, et cetera. So
Yes, to go from the retreat to the back to the board
Back.
meeting.
Is it
Okay.
the same link? I'm sorry. I don't.
It is the same link. It's the same
Okay.
link. Yeah. So yeah, same link as we were just in for public before. We're going back to that one now.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion. Thank you, Charlene. We'll be in touch. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to take a brief 5-minute recess to return to the WebEx to continue this public meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Siders. All in favor? All right, Ms. Butler, that's unanimous. I'll see you all back in the WebEx in a few minutes. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Just was on with Miss Wright. She's trying to get the link to log in. So just give us a minute and we will resume.
Yeah, I had difficulty. I had to come back in on my phone for some reason.
Okay. All right. I believe that's everybody. So we are back in public session from our retreat. Thank you, everybody. Miss Butler, can you call the roll?
Yes. Board Member Bergen.
We can't hear you, Susan. Do you want to come back to her, Miss Butler? Well, I see her, but we can't hear her.
Okay,
Susan?
and I
Oh, wait.
cannot see her because I have only on my phone.
Okay.
Board
We're
Member
doing roll
Cuddle.
call, Susan. Board Member Bergen, we're doing roll call.
I don't think she can hear.
No, doesn't look like it. All right. I'm going to all right, I'm gonna reach out. So excuse me, everybody, but you can looks like this left. I guess if you join. All right, Ms. Butler, if you want to go and come back, we
Sure. Board Member Cuddle.
Here.
Board Member Joshua here.
here.
Board Member Manny.
Here.
Board Member Malaspina.
Here.
Board Member Saban. I do not believe he's back.
No, he won't be joining this part of the meeting. Thank you.
Board Member Siders.
Here.
Board Member Winkfield.
Here.
Board Member Wright.
I'm present.
Board Member Bergen.
Susan, it shows that you're still muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Okay. They can't. It looks like she can't hear. I'm gonna call her. Just give me 1 second, folks. I just want to make sure that she can. Just give me one.
Maybe she can just call in because all that's left is to vote. If she just calls in, that would count for being present. Just a thought.
Okay. All right, Ms. Bowler, I know we're gonna wait because we want to do the vote. We want to make sure we can, we have all 8 for that. Is it possible to then go to, can we skip ahead to public speaks before we come back to the action item? In the interest of time?
You can do that. Obviously it's preferred that you do it after, but you can do it.
All right, well, Mr. Bonds, can you at least let me see if there may not even be public speak. So I have the update, Mr. Bonds, so I will pull it up. All right, I don't see any, so maybe we didn't technically do it. Okay, Mr. Bonds, you concur with what I'm saying. All right. I still don't see Board Member Bergen.
I'll send her an email with the call-in information.
All right, thanks. We'll wait 1 or 2 minutes. And again, I'm sorry, everybody, for the delay.
While we have this moment, just to let the board members know, I sent you a few important emails over the last hour or so. So when you have a moment, please take a look.
Think I see her. Just came on.
Board Member Bergen, are you there? Can you hear us? Is that you, Board Member Bergen?
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank
All
you
right.
for your patience. Sorry.
So we understand. I know we went a lot of different lengths this evening, so I do want to thank everybody for their patience. And again, thank you to Mr. Bonds and Mr. Myers in particular for helping us navigate, both tonight's multiple meeting platform meeting as well as this week's the last 2 hybrid meetings. We've got in person and folks attending virtually, and things have worked rather smoothly. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work that their team has put in to make that possible. So thank you for that. And we're all back. We just want to move to the action items. For this evening, we do have, I guess I need to make a motion for 4177 for discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to bring resolution 4177 for discussion. May I have a second?
Aye.
Thank you, Board Member Massimino. Well, I guess all in favor? Yeah. All right, that is unanimous, Ms. Butler. Thank you. I do want to, before we I want to open discussion by maybe I can share this with everybody. There's been one slight change from the version that was shared this afternoon due to some miscommunication. In the interest of, I will share it, and obviously it will be posted, but I'll just read off the standing committees just so everyone has an understanding and knows what the vote, what it will be. Obviously, curriculum instruction will have all 9 of us, and this is effective, for August through the calendar, well, December 31st of 2021. The finance committee, as I would hope, the finance committee will, Ms. Wright will remain chair with board members Cuddle and Saban. Personnel committee, Ms. Manny, board member Manny will remain chair with me and board member Winkfield. And for the policy committee, board member Bergen will remain chair with board members Malspina and Siders. And the municipal partnerships will be board member Bergen and me, excuse me. And then the negotiations will be chaired by by me along with board members Manny and Sider. So those two are unchanged. With respect to the safety and security, we've tabled that particular ad hoc committee for now, pending further discussion. So that is the content of the resolution that's up for this evening. I just want to, since I said that, it's now being shared with everybody and will be posted on the website very shortly. That said,
President
is there
Joshua,
any discussion? Yes, Ms. Butler.
excuse me, I just want to make sure, for municipal partnerships, it is you and who else?
Board Member Bergen.
Thank you.
Okay, with
May I
that is,
ask- May I ask a question?
yes, Board Member Wright.
I'm sorry. I'm looking here back at chair. It just came to me. I'm looking at the, when you talked about the municipal partnerships.
Yes.
Are these in addition to the ad hoc committees that we already have? Are these,
So I don't think we really have ad hoc committees right now. I mean, these would be the two. We have liaisons. So for instance, Board Member Bergen is the chief liaison. I think Board Member Malspina is for the Essex Regional, is educational, whatever, ERESC. That's, I know it better by the initials. I mean, Board Member Cuddle is our NJSBA rep, and Board Member Side is our legislative rep. So those are more, I'm gonna call those committees, I would call those liaisons. So those do remain, those are not changing as part of this resolution.
okay, so we will still have the Board of School estimate then? Because I know
Yes,
I'm the
yes.
liaison for the Board of School estimate and I didn't see it here, so.
Right, because
Okay.
this was really just about, this is about committee. So I didn't include the board of school estimate, but right, that will remain
Okay.
unchanged.
Thank you.
Yep. Board Member Malaspina and then Board Member Cuddle.
Just so the public understands, because, I want to make it this, can you just go over for everybody what the sort of charge of the new municipal thing is going to be, just so everybody understands that?
Sure. So, it's an ad hoc committee. We'll meet, sporadically at best. This is something that board member Baker had, I don't know if she started it, but I know it was when former board member Elizabeth Baker was here, and when she was president, she would have, occasional meetings with leadership in both towns, Maplewood and South Orange, and discuss certain things. I think this was, one of the committees that was used to help build support for the bonding. That's my understanding. I am, bringing it back. I think, we talked earlier in the year, we've heard, as I said, when there was some discussion about the differences between the Board of School estimate and, at that time it's called a two towns committee. I think both towns have different names for it. So I gave it my own name for us, which is why, the words municipal partnerships might be unfamiliar, but that's essentially what it is. And I don't remember exactly the terminology that was used when it was in its previous iteration, but it's essentially a resuscitation of that committee for the purposes of, discussions. One of the things that I think it would come out of there are, we've talked about in our transportation policy, the idea of the hazardous routes. And so that's something that we have asked the transportation folks at the town levels to help us analyze and come back to us with. So that's one example of work that might be driven through that committee. And to be frank, we're not going to drive that work. We're just sort of when the towns need someone to talk to about that those are the people they would come to. So that's an idea of what that committee would do. Hold on, I just want to send this out so it gets updated. So
Thank you for that. Oh, sorry.
No
I thought
problem.
I was just
No,
responding. Thank you for that.
No problem. I'm just about to cut. I know board member Cuddle had their hand up, so I wanted to come back to them before we move forward.
Yeah, so I was not clear earlier that the security ad hoc committee was being removed from consideration and tabled for tonight until you just mentioned it. Is there a reason for that?
I think
if I may ask?
Yes, one of the things that I think I got out of of this retreat was trying to understand why, the way I envision it is it essentially being sort of an offshoot, not so much offshoot, being closely tied to our finance facilities committee, which is why the original intent was to have all three members of that committee be on the subcommittee. I recognize the importance of it. I just wanted to do a bit more digging and understanding, if you will. And I hopefully, if we can meet, if we'll have at least 2 meetings in August. So we can always action that and add that one little piece back. But I did want to take more time after hearing some of the stuff I heard tonight about committees generally before putting it forward.
So if I may, respectfully in response, if that was on the fly based upon tonight's conversation, um, I'm not going to disagree. Of course, as president, you have the leeway to be able to assign committees, and I very much respect that. But I just want to give pause that if this was a decision that was made in the course of the past 2 hours we've been convening and it wasn't relayed, that perhaps might not be the best way to convey that now to the public and or to make the change. I believe that personally, that the Security Ad Hoc Committee would be beneficial, and I believe that Dr. Taylor supported that. So I hope that we revisit this. But I, you know, uh, I just wanted to make sure that, there was perhaps pause to
I
reflect.
understand. I guess so. The I do recognize its importance. I also recognize that if it's important for it to be best effective, we need to have people who want to be there. So with the understanding that some people may not want to be there, some do. I don't think this is the place to start asking people to join or not join, which is why I made the decision to table it at least for tonight. I think those conversations are best suited, as what some things we just heard this evening, one-on-one conversations. So I don't want to put people on the spot and say, are you interested in joining, yes or no? Because I don't know. I don't know if that's fair. And that seems like it's one of those gotcha moments that we just talked about avoiding. So
I
board member Manny,
respectfully
and
disagree,
then
but
I'll come back. I just want to get to board member Manny and then I'll come back to you. Go
Yeah,
ahead, board member Manny.
thank you, board president Joshua and board member Cuddle for bringing that up. I think every board member should want to serve on this committee, and we can't, right? But because this is of importance, and I would hope that whatever decisions you make, board members step up and serve our community in this important role.
Board member Mousman and then back to Cuddle.
I actually appreciate the fact that you listened to, took in what was said at the board retreat and made this decision. And I do believe that we do all need to, want people to serve on it and that they have the expertise and the knowledge, coming because it is such an important committee. So I don't want it to be something that is done without, everybody being at least asked about it. So I'm thankful for you for your ability to listen and table it for now.
Thank you, board member Cuddle.
so my understanding was the board members that were put on the resolution were informed and supported being on the committee, which is why I made the comment. I believe the Security Ad Hoc Committee is of importance, and it should include board members that want to and can contribute to such an ad hoc committee. So that was why I made the comments that I did. It was not in light of wanting to just add board members without their knowledge. My assumption was that the board members had already agreed to be a part of that committee, and that's why we were putting forward on the resolution tonight. And my comment was, again, to clarify, because I thought it was an important committee, and wondering why we were tabling it just as a whole.
So just to again provide more feedback on that, I did email the people several times, and I didn't hear anything back. But one of the things we just heard at the retreat is like that's not always the best, though. While I might personally think it is, and I do think people were given enough time. I'm trying to, be proactive in taking some of the lessons that I heard from this evening. So if it's an opportunity to, reset, if you will, and ensure, participation that I wholeheartedly agree is very important for this board. And knowing that we'll have, a couple of, meetings in the next month to action this, that I think that's essentially my thought process. So, it's not necessarily a decision I'm making lightly, because you all know my stance on not just committees of a whole, but generally that people, if information is disseminated in what I perceive to be a timely manner, then from what I can tell, one of the things we heard about tonight was SLA, so that's something we should be considering down the line. That I do think, but we just heard, sometimes emails may not always be the best. I'm trying to move forward, and also trying to, I don't want to slow down the work of the board, but I think, holding this one piece off for a couple of weeks in ensuring, active participation for people who want to be there is probably the best way forward for us. But I'm open to hear from others. Board Member Cuddle.
Thank you. And so I don't want to belabor this, but I very much do support the fact that we want people that want to, board members that want to, and have the ability to be able to contribute to such an important committee and conversation. I just really I guess my larger point to pause is that this is a large concern, and security, safety, and I'm glad to hear that we will revisit this in the next couple of weeks, but I just don't want it to fall off the radar, though, because I know it's such a concern. So thank you.
And I'm telling you, it's not going to fall off the radar. And, for what it's worth, I can't even, one of the people who would be assigned is not here. So I don't, again, well, I don't think it's fair to just, put people on the spot, to ask them if they want to be here. Yeah, but, one of the people is not here. So I can't, due to a previous engagement. So I can't, I just don't feel comfortable just asking people and then assuming, even though, like I said, I did send out communication and asked for feedback, so again, we can revisit, we will, revisit in August. Any other comments or feedback? All right, seeing none, closed discussion. Ms. Butler, can you please call the roll on, I believe it's 4177, this time in reverse alphabetical order.
Board Member Bright.
One point of order, please. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dr. Taylor.
I'm sorry.
Just to follow up with the solicitor, do we need to vote to take it off the table and then vote on the resolution? Just want to make sure that we're clear on the process.
I think it's all around one resolution for committee, so it's just the fact that I don't know. I have the revised one that I just sent for updating, so that's the one. The resolution itself doesn't mention the committee's assignments by names. It just references the actual committee assignments, which I just read out.
I mean more of the formal tabling process. Just from my previous experience, when something had been tabled, it had to be officially untabled. So I wasn't sure if that was something that we were following or if I missed it. Ms. Butler, am I talking too low about the tape? Should the board vote to untable this, or is just a straight vote on the resolution fine?
I believe the only time you would have to worry about the tabling and untabling would be if you did it at the same meeting. In this instance, we are at a separate meeting from when it was first tabled. Now you have brought it back onto the agenda for at a different meeting.
With a different resolution number too. So,
Right.
because that was one of my things. I thought we could just bring it back to the same number, but apparently you can't. So, all right. So before I just want to clarify, we are voting on 4177, which is amending the committees as I just read out. And if necessary, I can read them out again just for clarity. Is that something people want to hear just one more time? All right, so the personnel committee, well, let me start, sorry. The curriculum instruction committee will have all 9 members and be a committee of the whole. The finance committee, board member Wright will chair along with and sit with board members Cuddle and Saban. The personnel committee, board member Manny will chair and sit with board members Joshua and Winkfield. The policy committee, board member Bergen will continue to chair and sit with board members Malaspina and Siders. For the ad hoc, we are continuing to keep the negotiations committee that will be chaired by the board president along with board members Manny and Siders. And for the municipal partnerships, it will be board members Joshua and Bergen. So those are the appointments up for this evening as part of that resolution. Okay, and with that said, board member, I'm sorry, Ms. Butler, can you please call the roll this time in reverse alphabetical order?
Board member Wright,
Sorry, yes.
board member Winkfield,
Yes.
board member Siders,
Yes.
board member Malaspina,
Yes.
board member Manny,
Yes.
board president Joshua,
No.
board member Cuddle,
Yes.
board member Bergen,
Yes.
okay, motion passes 7-1.
Thank you. We'll now move on to new business. Does anyone have any new business this evening? All right, seeing none, I'd like to close new business. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education will meet in public session Monday, August 16th at 6:30 p.m. in the superintendent's office at 525 Academy Street, Maplewood, to discuss you as well. Well, no, we won't. The executive session will just be in person. Well, I guess as well as use an online video conference platform to discuss personnel legal issues, negotiation and other matters announced at the later date. Sorry.
Excuse me, board president Joshua.
Yes.
I think you stated that you would be meeting in public first and then in the superintendent's office. So if you could.
Okay, I'll start over. All right, sorry. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education will meet in closed session Monday, August 16th at 6:30 p.m. in the superintendent's office, as well as using the online video conference platform to discuss personnel legal issues, negotiations, and other matters to be announced at a later date. Immediately following the closed session, the Board of Education will meet in public session at 7:30 in the district meeting room, also at 525 Academy Street, as well as using an online video conference platform, which will include hearings of individuals and delegates. The committee can view the meeting by following the steps which will be listed on our agenda. Members of the committee who would like to attend in person, please note that masks and social distance masks will be required. Action will be taken. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Malaspina. All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Ms. Butler, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 9:37 p.m. Thursday, July 22nd. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Cuddle. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.